Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Hare Krishna. So we'll continue reading chapter 19 of Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita book. Chapter 19, Planting the Seed. Does what you told us this morning, Howard asked, mean we are supposed to accept the spiritual master to be God? That means he's due the same respect as God, being God's representative, Prabhupada replied calmly. Then he is not God? No, Prabhupada said. God is God. The spiritual master is his representative. Therefore, he is as good as God because he can deliver God to the sincere disciple. Is that clear? From Dialogue with Hayagriva. August 1966. It was makeshift, a storefront turned temple, and a two-room apartment transformed into the Guru's residence and study. But it was complete nonetheless. It was a complete monastery amid the city slums. The temple, the storefront, was quickly becoming known among the hip underground of the Lower East Side. The courtyard was a strangely peaceful place for aspiring monks, with its little garden, bird sanctuary, and trees squeezed in between the front and rear buildings. The Swami's back room was the inner sanctum of the monastery. Each room had a flavor all its own, or rather, it took on its particular character from the Swami's activities there. The temple room was his kirtan and lecture hall. The lecture was always serious and formal, even from the beginning when there was no dais and he had to sit on a straw mat facing a few guests. It was clear he was here to instruct, not to invite casual give and take dialogue. Questions had to wait until he finished speaking. The audience would sit on the floor and listen for 45 minutes as he delivered the Vedic knowledge intact, always speaking on the basis of Vedic authority, quoting Sanskrit, quoting the previous spiritual masters, delivering perfect knowledge supported with reason and argument. While contending with noises of the street, he lectured with exacting scholarship and deeply committed devotion. It appeared that he had long ago mastered all the references and conclusions of his predecessors and had even come to anticipate all intellectual challenges. He had he also held kirtanas in the storefront. Like the lectures, the kirtanas were serious, but they were not so formal. Prabhupada was lenient during kirtan. Visitors would bring harmoniums, wooden flutes, guitars, and they would follow the melody or create their own improvisations. Someone brought an old string bass and bow, and an inspired guest could always pick up the bow and play along. Some of the boys had found the innards of an upright piano waiting on the curb with someone's garbage, and they had brought it to the temple and placed it near the entrance. During a kirtan, freewheeling guests would run their hands over the wires creating strange vibrations. Robert Nelson, several weeks back, had brought a large cymbal that now hung from the ceiling, dangling close by the Swami's dais. But there was a limit to the extravagance. Sometimes, when a newcomer picked up the kartals and played them in a beat other than the standard 1 2 3, Swamiji would ask one of the boys to correct him, even at the risk of offending the guest. Prabhupada led the chanting and drummed with one hand on a small bongo. Even on this little bongo drum, he played Bengali Mridanga rhythms so interesting that a local conga drummer used to come just to hear. the Swami gets in some good licks. The Swami's kirtans were a new high, and the boys would glance at each other with widening eyes and shaking heads as they responded to his chanting, comparing it to their previous drug experiences and signaling each other favorably. This is great. It is better than LSD. Hey man, I'm really getting high on this. And Prabhupada encouraged their newfound intoxication. As maestro of these kirtans, he was also acting expertly as guru. Lord Chaitanya had said there are no hard and fast rules for chanting the holy name, and Prabhupada brought the chanting to the Lower East Side just the way, a kindergarten of spiritual life. He once called a temple. Here he taught the ABCs of Krishna consciousness, lecturing from Bhagavad Gita and leading the group chanting of Hare Krishna. Sometimes after the final kirtan, he would invite those who were interested to join him for further talks in his apartment. In the back room of his apartment, Prabhupada was usually alone, especially in the morning, in the early morning hours 2, 3, and 4 a.m., when almost no one else was awake. In these early hours, his room was silent, and he worked alone in the intimacy of his relationship with Krishna. He would sit on the floor behind his suitcase desk, worshipping Krishna by typing the translations and purports of his Srimad Bhagavatam. But this same back room was also used for meetings, and anyone who brought himself to knock on the Swami's door could enter and speak with him at any time face to face. Prabhupada would sit back from his typewriter and give his time to talking, listening, answering questions, sometimes arguing or joking. A visitor might sit alone with him for half an hour before someone else would knock, and Swamiji would invite the newcomer to join them. New guests would come and others would go, but Swamiji stayed and sat and talked. Generally, visits were formal. His guests would ask philosophical questions and he would answer, much the same as after a lecture in the storefront. But occasionally, some of the boys who were becoming serious followers would monopolize his time, especially on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday nights when there was no evening lecture in the temple. Often they would ask him personal questions. What was it like when he first came to New York? What about India? Did he have followers there? Were his family members devotees of Krishna? What was his spiritual master like? And then Prabhupada would talk in a different way, quieter, more intimate, and humorous. We'll stop here and continue reading tomorrow. Few realizations from today's reading at the beginning, how there is a conversation about spiritual master. That spiritual master is not God, but he is the representative of God. Like I think, yeah, few days back we're reading in Krishna book, chapter 38, most probably, that how a spiritual master is compared to a manager or director of a company, and the god like the CEO. So if you need promotion or you need a appraisal, then you don't have to go directly to the CEO. You have to, like, all your work is recognized by your immediate manager or like director. No, you don't, for any promotion or appraisal, you don't have to go to directly to the CEO. The manager knows everything. So it's kind of like an analogy, like how the spiritual master, he represents a manager, and whatever you do, spiritual master, you have to do all the services you are doing to the Lord. It's we have to do through our spiritual master as an offering to the Lord. So, spiritual master is the representative of God. He knows what we are doing. If the spiritual master is satisfied and Krishna is ultimately satisfied. So that's why spiritual master is not God, but he is representative of God. We sing like Saksha Dharipena Samasta Sastri. We sing in some Mangalarti time morning. So that's what one realization from the beginning of today's reading. Then it is mentioned that how Srila Prabhupada, he is alone in the night time, like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, he was all alone and he was busy in translating Srimad Bhagavatam. And recently, Guru Maharaj was telling like he saw himself, he witnessed that how in Mayapur, Srila Prabhupada, in the midnight, he used to wake up and work on his books. So, and we say like we don't have time to read Srila Prabhupada books. So it is our responsibility that how much effort Srila Prabhupada has put. If we want to pay back, then we have to, every day we have to read Srila Prabhupada books. And that's what is our responsibility, no excuse. Because we can, by reading Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita book, we can understand what Srila Prabhupada did for us. He did not do anything for himself. He did it for us because he had to fulfill his Guru's instructions. If Srila Prabhupada wanted, he can like just sit back at one place in India. Why he took so much of difficulty to come to Western world? Because he came, that's why today, like what we are learning, whatever we are understanding about the Lord, about the scriptures, because of that only. So we should not just take it for granted, but we have to seriously read Srila Prabhupada books, follow our Guru's instructions. That is one realization. Then next is about, it's very straightforward about how the description about different rooms, how a small room got converted to temple room where Srila Prabhupada used to give lecture and for kirtans, and how Srila Prabhupada was so expert in playing instead of mridanga, the drums also. He was playing the same rhythm on the drums like local drummers. They used to come and see the tricks Srila Prabhupada was using. So yes, we can understand Srila Prabhupada's position from that.